If you've seen multiple videos on my channel, then you know that over the past couple years, I've been really interested in trying to get a house. However, buying a house isn't always the best financial choice for your situation. So in today's video, I want to weigh the pros and cons of renting versus owning. So first, let's talk about renting, which is, what I'm currently doing and have been doing for my entire adult life. So let's get into the pros of renting. So for me, one of the biggest advantages of renting is flexibility. Since I have lived in my current area, I have lived in 3 different apartments, and each apartment has been in different locations around town, and I've gotten to just explore those different areas, get really familiar with them, discovered new shops, new restaurants, and you can't do that when you own a home. You're really kind of just stuck in one area. But with renting, especially if you're gonna stay in one city for a certain amount of time, like for me, I've been in the same city and I've just been able to bounce from different areas of town and get really familiar with them. Or if you don't want to stick to the same city, you can still rent for 1 to 2 years in one city and then go to a different state and try out a different city, go to a different country. Renting just gives you a lot of flexibility with your lifestyle, and you can just pick up and move whenever you want to. Another really big advantage is the fact that I don't have to worry about maintenance. So one time in the first apartment that I ever lived in, I was washing clothes and there was this huge thundering rumble that came out of the wash machine. And when it was happening, I was like, ooh, this is not good. It's not good at all. And then once it stopped, I opened the lid and the entire inside was really loose. It's always loose, but this time it was really, really loose, and my clothes were completely soaked, and I had to do that to squeeze out all the excess water. And I was like, I think I broke this. So I called maintenance and I was like, I think my wash machine is broken. And it was broken, and within 3 to 4 days I had a new wash machine, and it was completely free to me. And if I had been if I had owned that apartment, I would have had to pay for a new wash machine, which, I don't know the cost of washing machines, but because I've never had to buy one before, but I know that they're hundreds of dollars, and I didn't have to pay for that. So my point is, when you are renting, yes, you want to be a good renter and not destroy the place that you're living, but at the same time, if something does happen, it's not your responsibility to fix it. And the last advantage of renting, in my opinion, is the fact that you're not stuck living there for some, unknown amount of time. When you're renting, you sign a lease. Most of them are for a year, sometimes 18 months. So I've been seeing more places recently with 24 months. And after your lease is up, you can move. And I've never had to do this before, but you could also just break your lease. If something came up and you needed to move to a different city or a different state, you could just break your lease and move. And breaking your lease is the most extreme bad thing that can happen if you need to move quickly, versus things that can happen when you're owning, which we'll talk about that later in the video. Now, renting is not all positives. There are a couple things that I think are negatives when it comes to renting. Number 1, which is the main negative thing to me, rent goes up every single year. As I said earlier, I have lived in 3 different apartments, and every time I moved, it wasn't because I was just ready to move. It was mainly because my rent went up. So for each apartment that I lived in, I've lived there for at least 2 years. And over the course of those 2 years, the rent just went up by hundreds of dollars, hundreds of dollars. This last year, my rent went up $400. And which is why this will be the last year that I'm living here, because that's just ridiculous. And I can't even imagine what it's gonna be the next time they want me to renew my lease. It's ridiculous, and you don't really have any control over it. the most you can do is move to a cheaper area of town, or just move to a cheaper city, or have roommates, that can bring the cost down. And that's just not something that I'm willing to do, but that is, if you're willing to do that, then that is a good workaround. And then the last disadvantage to me when it comes to renting is that you don't have like a lot of control over customizing the place. Now, if you're someone who's not really interested in decorating or customizing things, then, you know, this may not be of any concern to you. But for those of us who like home decor, yeah, it's like I can't paint, or if I do paint, if they do let me paint, then I have to paint it back whenever I move. And if I'm only gonna stay here for a year, 2 years tops, I don't want to have to go through all that trouble. And there's some people out there who do like these really creative, renter-friendly forms of decorating. But again, you know, that's like a process to do all that, and then you just have to take it all down when you move out. So that can be kind of frustrating. But to me, like, it's a minimal disadvantage, but still a disadvantage, the fact that you can't fully customize the place that you're living in. Okay, so that was renting, but now let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of actually buying a home. So again, let's talk about the advantages first, and number one is stability. Like I said before, I have moved 3 different times since I've lived in this area, and I look forward to a day where I don't have to move. I look forward to a day where I don't have to like search for apartments anymore. I don't have to find the best deal anymore. I can just find an area that I like, and you know, like it has what I need in that area, and odds are that area will just continue to like grow, and businesses will come and shops will come and things like that. And just find an area that I like and just settle down. I'm at a point sounds old, but like I'm at a point where I would like to just kind of settle down and just have like a home that is mine, and I know that nothing's gonna happen to it, or like nothing's gonna make me have to leave in like a couple years. Because now it's very much so with renting, it's very much so like, well, this is really nice. Like, this is my favorite place that I've ever lived in. But I also know that it will be short-lived, because sooner rather than later, I will be priced out of the area and I'll have to move. So it'd be really nice to just have a place where I don't have to think about that. Advantage number 2, the opposite of when renting, when you own, you actually are able to customize it. It's yours, so as long as you have the money for it, you can make as many customizations as you want. There is one caveat to that. Some places have an HOA, meaning a homeowners association. I feel like they don't have that many benefits, and they just like charge money to create rules for your neighborhood. But a lot of like newer communities will have an HOA, and the HOA will tell you like, you can do this, you can't do that, type thing. So you can customize it. You can definitely customize like the inside of your house, I would think, but things related to the outside, that's when the HOA would be more concerned and would step in. Another advantage is the fact that your mortgage will stay the same. And when I say mortgage, I'm talking about just your like principal payment and interest that you owe each month. Those things won't change unless you refinance your mortgage. There are other things related to the monthly costs of your home that can change, and I'll talk about those in a second when we get into the disadvantages of owning a home. But the last advantage to owning a home are the tax deductions. I feel like the people who created the laws, like tax laws, really hated people who were not married, didn't have kids, and also didn't own property. Because if you have those 3 things, that really unlocks a lot of tax deductions for you. So when you own a home, you're actually able to deduct the interest from your monthly like mortgage payments. So the interest that was a part of that payment, that is actually a tax deduction at the end of the year. Now let's get into the disadvantages of owning a home. Number 1, maintenance. If anything breaks in that house, it is up to you to fix it. Just kind of saying that just adds a lot of like pressure to my mind. Like, whew, from anything small to anything big, it is up to you. And in fact, a lot of people say that you shouldn't own a home until you have like not only the down payment saved, but also already have like savings set aside for maintenance of that home. Okay, so another bad thing about owning a home, remember earlier how I was saying like your mortgage doesn't change? That's kind of true, but kind of not true, because other things are looped in to your mortgage. So your mortgage isn't just your like the principal payments and interest that you owe, but it's also property taxes. Property taxes can change, and there's not much that you can do about that, and you'll just have to pay whatever your new property tax is. The cost of your home insurance. You can shop around and see like who's cheaper, but you have to have home insurance, and the prices are what the prices are. And also that HOA. Now, not every neighborhood has an HOA, and when you're shopping for a home, you can try to like specifically have a house that doesn't have a HOA. But if you do get into a house that has one, you just have to pay whatever that price is. And some HOAs you pay every month, some you pay quarterly, some twice a year, and some annually. And your HOA can also vary vastly depending on the neighborhood that you're in. Like a small subdivision would probably have a smaller HOA versus like a high-rise condo. So, in case you weren't aware, your mortgage can change. It's just the principal and interest won't change, but the other factors definitely can, and most likely will over the course of time. Another con is you can't just pick up and move if you get tired of the house. It's yours, so it's your responsibility. With renting, you just wait until your lease is up, or if you can't wait that long, you can just break the lease. But with your house, you can't do that. You would have to sell it. You have two options. You can sell it, which that could be a quick process, or it could not, but that's your first option. Or you can rent it out. That's one way to get around it, by still owning it, but you just not living there yourself. Any property that I plan on buying in the future, I want to be able to hold on to it. So I would buy with the intention of, even if I don't live there, would someone else want to live there? Like, would I always be able to have renters? But even finding renters isn't necessarily a quick process. And just because you find them doesn't mean that they'll be able to move in like as soon as you find them. Like, there's going to be a process involved, whether you are trying to sell it to get rid of it or you're trying to rent it to someone else so that you can move out. Either way, it's not going to be like an instant type of thing. And then lastly, I think just the biggest con outside of maintenance, I think maintenance is a huge con, but outside of that, I think the biggest con is just the mental pressure and like emotional responsibility involved with you own a building. And for most people, that will be like the most expensive thing that you ever buy. So like the mental pressure of the fact that you are responsible for all the maintenance. You are responsible for, the inspections that come with the closing process. You actually have to go through the closing process, which it has like multiple steps involved into it. And there's a lot of people who just frankly don't want to deal with that pressure. They don't want to have to be responsible for this entire house and everything that comes with it. So I say all of that to say, we have weighed the pros and cons. We have looked at the advantages and disadvantages of renting, and then we looked at the advantages and disadvantages of owning a home. And I think bottom line, it depends on two things. Number one, what do you actually want? What actually has value to you? Do you value the flexibility that is renting? Would you value the stability that is being a homeowner? Like, which one is actually important to you, and which one do you actually want in your life right now? And then from there, once you have a decision, let's say your decision is like you do want to own a home, you do want to own property. From there, I think the decision is, are you in a financial place to be able to own a home? Do you have a down payment? You don't have to have 20%. Some people do suggest that, but it's not mandatory to have 20%. A conventional loan, you can have like 3% down. But if you put only 3% down, you are going to have a much larger mortgage. And can you handle a much larger mortgage? And then don't just think about like, oh, well, this is my mortgage. I pay $2,000 in rent. I can also pay $2,000 with a mortgage. Not necessarily, because remember, one of the cons of owning a home is that you also have to do the maintenance. And don't forget the fact that outside of the down payment, there's also closing costs involved with buying a home. And then there's also the cost of moving. Then there's also the cost of furnishing this new home. And then also saving for a rainy day that will happen, not if, it will happen, being prepared to pay for whatever home maintenance whenever that happens. Not to scare anyone, but just, I don't want people to like rush into this and not be like fully aware of what you're actually signing up for. So number one, is this actually something that you want, or is it just what society is telling you that you should want? And number two, if owning a home is something that you want right now, are you financially prepared to do that? And if not, that's perfectly understandable and nothing to be ashamed of, but let's just get to a point where we are more financially prepared to make that step. So that was a lot of information. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, give it a thumbs up, leave some comments down below, and I'll see you next time.